Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about the Blair Witch Project. And I'd like to go through some of the themes and the structure of this 1999 horror film directed and written by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez. Around about the time when this came out, I was at the end of my time at university, and I remember watching this in the cinema and being absolutely terrified by it. And part of the horror, I think, comes outside the film with the this internet campaign they had, which went viral. It was probably one of the first internet things, in the days before YouTube and social media, that really have made a splash. And people generally thought that there was something real about this, and people believed in the hype and the promotion, and that made the film far more scary. At the time, living across the road from a woods as well, uh, the film really stayed with me into the night time. And it's a great film because it relies much on what we don't see rather than what we do see. You could perhaps argue that the film is in 5 sections or 5 acts. We begin with this part of the film where we're introduced to the characters, Josh, Mike, and in charge of everyone is Heather. And she wants to make this documentary about this supernatural evil, which seems to centre around this witch character. And they go through this town, Burkittsville, which used to be called Blair. And they're interviewing all these locals, and some of them are, kind of fairly normal mums, people working in shops, etc. Some of them are slightly more eccentric. Some of them have heard of the goings on over the years, and some of them haven't. So we're introduced to these guys. And then in the second act, we see Heather, Mike, and Josh go into the woods and to shoot the film and record the audio for this documentary. And Heather is the most enthusiastic. The others seem to be, a bit more cynical about the whole thing. Heather kind of carries on, and she wants to find this place called Coffin Rock. She's read about in a story where this horrific thing happened to these men. And then they find these stones. It's like a cemetery, I guess. These kind of, I suppose, cairns, you might call them, these stones, which seem to be put around in the middle of the woods in a certain organised way. And they start to argue, and you realise that things might possibly go wrong in this film. In the next act, something terrible happens. The map goes missing. Heather's in charge of this, it looks like a hand-drawn map, and it goes missing, and she thinks one of either Mike or Josh has taken it, and they start bickering and arguing, and they're completely lost, and their spirits begin to drop as well the more they argue, and eventually they find this shocking discovery of these kind of stick men hanging up on the trees. A very unforgettable image in this film. And then that night, there's absolute terror. They hear these children's voices outside their tent, and they kind of run for it in absolute terror into the woods. And there's all this commotion, and Heather sees this terrible thing. We never get to see it. I think we're supposed to have seen it, but it was never shot, this apparition. But we don't see it, but Heather sees it. And that kind of makes it more unsettling in a way. And eventually they return in the morning to the site of their tent, and everything's been rifled through, and there's this slime on Josh's stuff in particular. And then they have to go on their walk. They don't know where they're going, and they get more and more fed up with each other. And it turns out that Mike threw the map into a river, which really was where they hit rock bottom so far. They all start fighting, and they've been walking all day, and they come back to exactly where they left in the morning. This energy sapping, soul destroying walk, and they're back exactly where they were, and they're just in absolute despair. In the next morning, this is the end of the film, the fifth act, Josh is missing. They look for him, they don't know where he's gone. And they hear his voice every now and then. So he seems to be around, but they begin to think, is that really him at all? And then Heather finds this rather grim discovery tied up in Josh's shirt, or scraps of his shirt and sticks. Find what looks like teeth and maybe a part of Josh's tongue, and lots of blood in this grim package, which of course sends Heather over the edge, but she daren't tell Mike. It's here that they feel that they're absolutely done for. There's nothing they can do. Heather makes this tearful apology to their families, and the famous close-up shot of her face where she's too scared to be awake and too scared to go to sleep. And finally Josh and Mike they hear Josh's voice, and Heather and Mike find this abandoned house full of this kids' handprints on the wall and these weird runes. And eventually, spoiler alert, Heather finds Mike looking into a corner, and then she's clobbered, she falls down, and then presumably it'd be Mike's turn. And this is briefly referred to at the beginning of the film in one of the interviews, the way this child killer operates, perhaps inspired by the Blair Witch. So this film is rather unforgettable, and it lives long in the memory. It's been much imitated, of course, with Paranormal Activity and all these other found footage films, but you could argue that this was one of the first, and certainly the one that kick-started the genre. In terms of theme, there's lots about the occult and folklore and stories, legends. There's a lot about terror, despair, a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense that somehow the witch, if there is a witch, is controlling everything, and even the topography of the forest. Wherever they walk, somehow it's warped and they come back on themselves. It's a very frightening film, but it's definitely a great film. Of course, shot on an incredibly low budget. And you might find it a bit slow to begin with, but persevere right to the end. It's not a long film, and you will be shocked and scared by the end. I just included a brief PowerPoint of some of the main themes and structure of the film. Thanks for watching. Bye.